Welcome to This Week in Washington for August the 19th. We face tremendous struggles, as you know, in the financial situation of the country and how they will impact on federal investment in public transportation. Today, I'd like to report to you on some of the information we've gathered in the last several days that provide us with a little bit more insight of what we can expect in the next several weeks. As you know, Congress is currently away and will return, and the first order of business will be for the special super committee to decide on various cuts in federal investment across the board. As part of that process, our programs are also subject to reduction in all aspects of federal investment, whether it comes from the Department of Transportation or from Health and Human Services or Labor or any other federal agency. As I've reported in the past, our situation is made more difficult by our need to have a transportation reauthorization, which is now very far behind schedule. Our current authorization for Safety Lou, the extended authorization, expires on September 30th. We will have to have a continuation or another extension. Our guess is that there will be an extension of the current authorization through at least December. I expect there will be no progress on reauthorization in this period because I feel that most of the activity in Washington will be focused on the deficit cutting super committee, even though Congress is scheduled to vote for a budget that begins October 1st. Looking toward the October 1st budget in this extension, I think there is a possibility that we might not be as in bad shape as we thought earlier. The discussions on appropriations for next year, in part because of the discussions of the deficit, have provided a little bit more flexibility for the authorized number for transportation programs. In this respect, that number is larger than the Ryan budget. Consequently, the 30 to 35% reduction that would actually occur should that be adopted might in fact be less. It's impossible right now to give a definitive answer on that, but I'm hopeful in the next 30 or 45 days we'll have some better understanding of where that process is going. If you're an organization that has a fiscal year of October 1st and you're very dependent on federal revenue, it's a good idea to be taking stock now of what your financial resources and capacities are to get you through what could be a very long and delayed process. As you know, we have never had any luck completing the appropriations process on time in the last several years, even though we had less controversial situations. So I expect that this October 1st fiscal year will be much more difficult. In looking at reauthorization now, we think that one of the best things that's important for us is to remind Congress, as I said last week, of the important work that's going on across the country. My thinking today is that we need to target members of Congress about some of the more important elements that public transportation provides in meeting needs in our communities that is not often thought of as traditional public transit. You may recall that from the testimony that I gave at the Senate on transit reauthorization, I spent a great deal of time talking about the important way community and public transportation meets the healthcare needs of our older citizens and is the lifeline transportation system for Americans who are disabled, especially work, or need to attend training or take care of their healthcare needs. It's my plan that we, working together with our allies, will put together in November of this year, because I think we have time relative to when reauthorization will be, a look at a critical issue in transportation. One centered on how many Americans use community and public transportation in one day to meet two needs: One, their needs for hemodialysis and for chemotherapy. And secondly, how many Americans who are disabled need public transportation on that same day. It's my hope that we will generate a large number from a statistical sample that will give us a clue on what the impact of a single percentage reduction would mean on the two groups that I've described that are absolutely dependent upon public transportation. Instead of talking about numbers, we need to put real people forward and the real effects of what an across-the-board cut or reduction would be. Of course, none of this will resolve our issue until Congress or the administration comes up with an acceptable plan to raise the financial floor for public transportation. Like it or not, besides being a prisoner of this deficit reduction situation that's played out for the last 6 months, we remain prisoners captive by the declining revenue in the fuel tax and the apparent inability to raise that tax to provide additional revenue. It's my hope that the current discussion about a jobs bill will generate some additional support for finding the revenue that would be necessary to sustain and expand the public transportation system as well as the highway system. As I said last week, we must preserve but also expand if we are to meet the basic needs and obligations of the American people. And it's my hope that we'll find out that part of that need is measured in the life-sustaining services required in dialysis or with other special illnesses that are served by community and public transit. So I would say I'd look forward to seeing more about that from me in the next several weeks. The last thing I want to mention again today is that we will be meeting with CMS next week to talk about Medicare. Medicare is the unmet need in our industry that generates so much demand and so much service that saves the government money by reducing inpatient costs but provides transportation little in terms of return. It's my hope that we will make our case for that again and that we will get the kind of measurements that support our advocacy for providing a decent level of support and reimbursement for transportation agencies providing those life-sustaining services to older citizens. Thank you for your time today, and don't forget, if you have any questions or concerns, please get in touch with me, and I look forward to talking to you next week. Have a good weekend, and goodbye for now.